Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Charity Charge Show. I'm your host, Stephen Garton. Today, I am excited to feature our guest, Lauren Riley, who is the Executive Director of Gratitude Network. Lauren, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. No, this is super cool. I know we connected a number of months ago, and I'm glad that we found the time to do it today. Tell us, just to get started, what is Gratitude Network?
Yeah. So, Gratitude Network, we're a nonprofit accelerator. We help nonprofits who are making an impact specifically in children and youth, and we help them grow and scale their impact. Everything from executive coaching to tools and strategies, everything you need for, your startup nonprofit to really make sure that you can have success and scale, the crap out of your organization.
I love your passion and I love what you're doing. There's so many nonprofit organizations across the United States, but I feel that there's not enough organizations that are helping organizations from the capacity building standpoint, operational efficiency, helping them grow, helping them do more. Can you talk a little bit about, go a little bit deeper, like the role and kind of the purpose that Gratitude Network is fulfilling?
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly touching on this, right? So many for profit organizations have a leader or a founder who went to business school, went through an accelerator program, right? Really learned some of the hard skills, what it takes to run a business. And then when you look at the landscape in the nonprofit sector, you've got leaders who grew up leading with their heart. Right? Whether that's hearts, puppies, or rainbows, right? It's all about the heart and leading with your heart. But at the end of the day, a nonprofit is still a business, right? You have a P&L statement, you have, a balance sheet, and you've got to be able to not only understand it, but run a sustainable organization so that you can continue to make the impact that you want to see. What becomes problematic is we have leaders who don't know what they don't know. And so that's where gratitude and other capacity builders like us come in, where we can say, "Hey, let us give you the tools. Let me teach you the tools so that you can grow and scale your organization and really focus on that hard work instead of making it hard work."
And I'm just curious from your perspective, can you highlight some of the tangible things that you've seen as being the executive director, the results that have come out of it? And I would also add with that question, I can come back to it, but my perspective is totally aligned with yours in that, we're set up as a public benefit corporation. I bootstrapped Charity Charge, and we've now officially been in market and business for over 10 years. The challenges and the things that I had to learn along the way were really tough, difficult lessons. Fortunately, here and there, I had some great mentors as well, but I had to really stomach a lot of that stuff alone. And then that whole time, I've been working with nonprofit organizations, and nobody starts a nonprofit to do the fundraising, to do the bookkeeping,
Never.
to do the, personalities of like the board management, those types of things. They start an organization because they're super passionate about a mission or a cause that they were affected with, or their family member or someone close to them, or something happened
Yep.
that's near and dear to their heart. So they get into it for the passion
Yep.
and the mission, but then they're confronted with all these challenges. And I want to just thank you for what you were doing because it is so, so needed. And I truly believe that the nonprofit sector and the United States and the world at large, globally, will and is becoming a much, much better place because there's these support organizations like you're doing to help these nonprofit leaders be able to round out the skill set and the things that are required to truly make an organization successful. So
And we
thank you for what you're doing.
course. No, and we see it. I mean, 50% of nonprofits fail within the first 2 to 3 years, and only 30% make it to their 10th anniversary. And so even that, right? Those are right? We're asking nonprofits to change the world, make the world a better place, yet we're not providing them with the tools and resources to do it. And so I think that's where we can really come in, and I think where there's a really big charge of how do we support nonprofit leaders the same way we would support a for-profit CEO, right? For profit CEOs receive executive coaches that are $800 an hour, right? They've got boards who are supporting them with strategic planning. How do we provide some of those resources to nonprofits who've got pretty noble missions and they just need a little bit of help? And that's what I saw. I was a former New York City teacher. I taught ninth and 12th grade in the South Bronx, taught middle school in Harlem, knew a lot about schools, knew a lot about kids, but I didn't know anything about running nonprofits. And it took, finding gratitude. I'm a gratitude alum. I put my nonprofit through the program, and we 26x in 5 years, right? So I've drank the gratitude Kool-Aid because I've seen it happen, right? And it is pretty magical of, just receiving a little bit of that business acumen, mini MBA in the nonprofit sector with nonprofit language. And all of a sudden your organization can go from serving couple hundred kids in the South Bronx to serving 25,000 kids across the US. Those are the really magical stories where it's like, wow, even the smallest little change in business acumen can really exponentially impact a nonprofit.
Well, if it's possible, I'd like to dive a little bit deeper, but I know we only have so much time today. So as much as you can share, and it might kind of be surface level, let's talk about fundraising for an example.
Yep.
What are some of the common challenges that you see nonprofit leaders have when they come into the Gratitude Network? And what would be some of the fundamentals that you would teach them or try to help them learn and rationalize?
Yeah, a lot of nonprofits, especially those in kind of the startup space, they don't even have money to hire a development staff. And I'd actually highly encourage you not to hire development staff when you're starting up. The turnover is every 18 months. And unless they're bringing in a Rolodex, they're not going to learn your organization fast enough. And people actually want to hear from the leader of the organization. Common mistakes we see a lot is, please, sir, can I have some more? Right. And that immediately creates a power dynamic that puts you as the leader or as the nonprofit at kind of a lower standard, right? And you're asking for something and you're not giving anything in return. We really push our organizations to think about their unique value proposition, right? What are you actually providing to that donor, to right, to that foundation, to that corporation? And that could look very different, right? But making sure that you do have, hey, we're asking for money, but this is what we're giving you in return. It could be everything from, hey, you're going to receive impact reports every quarter so that you can see how far your dollars are stretched. Or with a corporation, we'd love to have to do an employee engagement day with you, right? And let's talk about, so that your employees can get really involved with the philanthropy your company is doing. But by really understanding what your unique value proposition is and what you're presenting, that all of a sudden now you're on an even playing field, right? I'm asking you for something, but guess what? I'm giving you something in return. We also see data means something these days, right? It's a really, really crowded philanthropic space, and being able to have hard data, not just the stories that pull at heartstrings. You have to have both. And being really clear, especially when who you're talking to, if they're business mindseted or have a business mindset, you want to lead with your data and close with your stories, not the other way around.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing all that. How do you feel about what are things that you're noticing organizations are doing to get better data from the systems or tools, bookkeeping, any practical areas in
Yeah.
there that you can
I
think
mean,
of?
AI AI is blowing up everywhere,
Uh-huh.
and nonprofits need to be using it, and that's a great way to have a Claude or a ChatGPT understand your organization and say, "What it right, create the SOP, right, the standard operating procedure for collecting data. What is data that this type of corporation or this type of foundation is looking for?" And all of a sudden, right, by working with, an AI feature, they can not only help you see this is what this sector, this, institutional donor is looking for, but now here's the SOP for how your organization can actually go about collecting that data. It's something we do a lot in our fellowship is understanding like how do you create operating procedures? How do you codify them? And how do you make sure that if you as the leader, leave the next day because you win the lottery, that someone could fill your seat and step in and do that procedure on their own. But highly recommend making sure that you have those operating procedures in place so that it's really easy to collect data. But also, again, right, your organization needs to be bigger than you, right? Everything needs to be written down, everything needs to be operationalized.
And what kind of, for example, here at Charity Charge internally, a tool that we use a ton of is Notion.
Yep.
Right. So are you using Notion? Are there any other kind of tech tools or things that also just come top of mind that you use within Gratitude Network as part of your tech stack?
Yeah, we try to be tech agnostic, as in, hey, we have vendors that we love to use, and Charity Charge is always one of them. But it's definitely making sure that the organizations that are with us understand when they need that type of tech. That, like, hey, for example, Salesforce is a great example. They give you 10 free seats if you are a 501(c)(3). Right. So, hey, Salesforce might be really great at first because it's free up to your 10 seats. But you might actually look at that CRM and go, oh, like that's a lot, right? How do I scale down? Or, oh, I need to ramp up. Maybe I need to go to a new CRM. And so, really helping nonprofits recognize here are all the tools out there, but when are you right? At what stage of your organization are you ready for which tool? But highly recommend, again, right? Read the blogs, figure out, okay, what do we have internally? And then also reach out to your peers in the space. We're always happy to give you a list of our favorite vendors, right? Notion is one of them. We have a really great relationship with Salesforce and a couple others, but highly recommend definitely like learning the space and figuring out how big your organization is and what tools are needed when.
Awesome. So I'm curious with the name Gratitude Network,
Yep.
that evokes so many things and many specific things to me. I'm curious to get your take on this next question. In my experience working with thousands of executive directors and nonprofit organizations, I find that, they're really dealing with way more than a for-profit CEO would because they have so many more stakeholders, right? They've got employees, obviously. They
Yep.
have their board, they have the donors, they have the actual community or the area that they're serving, and there's so much pressure that goes on all of them. I'm just curious, like from the gratitude networks, both in what maybe you guys do programmatically or what comes out of it. Can you talk at all about just that maybe peer support or emotional support?
Yeah. The nonprofit sector has the highest burnout rate out of every sector for profit, right? Including for profits, where the nonprofit sector as a whole, 19%. And there will be 800 in 2025, 860 nonprofit CEOs walked away from their jobs in the US alone. Doesn't even take into account internationally. So one of the reasons when we think about, right, why our name is the way it is, CEOs, especially in the nonprofit sector, have the weight, you mentioned it, have the weight of the world on their shoulders. And so creating that global network, whether you are in Shanghai, or you in Nairobi, Kenya, or you are in Brazil, or you are in Oakland, California, the fact that you can lean on people across the globe who are going through very similar situations and allowing for that vulnerability has been instrumental to why we've been able to receive the results we have here at Gratitude. So that peer network is instrumental. And it's not just for the year of the fellowship, it's like, for life, right? That you truly feel like you're part of the Gratitude Network for life. Purposely call ourselves gratitude, right? You pay for the privileges you receive. And so it's really important, right? We ask our fellows all the time, what do you need? But also, what can you provide? And really, that exchange of resources is so instrumental. And very often we see, hey, I need help reading a grant, but I can make an introduction to someone who's looking to fund girls' education. I need help with board management, but hey, I've got a really, really great marketing plan. I'd love to give you a template. And really, that exchange of ideas has made the network really strong.
That's awesome. And also, if it wasn't already obvious, I mean, having you on the podcast here, I really wanted to be able to share this and all the work that you're doing with the 3,000 organizations that we support. So, if there's executive directors, folks that are a part of our nonprofit community at Charity Charge listening to this, how do they usually get started or learn more
Yeah,
with
yeah.
your
So
organization if it sounds, appealing and interesting to them and they're nodding along and I mean, because
I'm
you
I
get,
can relate.
yeah,
I'm in.
yeah.
Yeah, so definitely check out our website, right? It's just gratitude-network.org, and it walks through. If you're a children and youth organization, you can apply for our fellowship. And that's right. It's a 13-month fellowship. We give 65% scholarship. So a lot of our applicants, are doing the program free of charge. If you are an organization who is a little bit bigger, but they're like, oh, Lauren is amazing. I love what she's talking about. We do a lot of also ad hoc, hey, coming in, running workshops. And I think that's been really effective for either larger organizations or collectives, right? Like a United Way who wants to have us, come in and run workshops. And then separate from that, Gratitude offers a lot of free workshops for all different nonprofits across the globe, regardless of your sector. And so subscribing to our newsletter that I promise only goes out every so often, but at least gives you, hey, they're doing a workshop on how to effectively use AI, or right? They're hosting a panel with 3 different fundraisers to talk about how to get the most money you can in a hard economy. And we try to do a lot of workshops so that people know the space is hard. Running a nonprofit is hard work. And so making sure that you have a network like ours at your back makes it a little less hard.
I'm curious, Lauren. We talked about, the work that you're doing is specific about the capacity building side or
Yep.
building up, lifting up the organizations that are doing the direct service, if we want to call it that. How does Gratitude Network go about? And you talked about the data, right? If there was a funder or a foundation or someone that's kind of nodding along so far as like, hey, I like what Lauren's having to say. How do you pitch Gratitude Network to present it as, a valuable partner to them?
Yeah. I mean, the cool part about Gratitude, I think, is our leverage model, right? Every time someone gives a dollar to gratitude, it's not just impacting one organization, we're impacting the 300 of our alumni. And actually, that ends up being about 412 individuals who've gone through our program. If you're going to call yourselves an accelerator, you better have data to back it up. Right, organizations that go through our program are 5Xing the number of kids they serve and 3Xing their revenue. And if we think back to again, right, 50% of nonprofits fail within the first 2 to 3 years. Our organizations, we've been around since 2012. 95% of our organizations are still in operations today. And so again, I am so proud of the work that Gratitude's doing because we're changing the way organizations think about sustainability. So when we're looking for our funders, and we're really excited to say, hey, we're also growing and scaling. We're looking for funders who really believe in leveraged models and how do we make the sector smarter, right, and more efficient. And that starts by funding organizations like ours who can make the entire sector smarter and more efficient.
Awesome. I appreciate you sharing that. That's really cool. And you've got good numbers. I shouldn't say I can't believe, but I'm shocked by the the 95% figure of organizations still being around compared to you started earlier in this podcast talking about what 30% were only traditionally around over 10 years.
Yep. No, it's a proud number, but they also know, I think they know they're not alone. And right, I think that's the piece of like, hey, is there someone trusted? And the hope is, right, you mentioned that you've talked to right, you have mentors of your own that when you go to and making sure that, every nonprofit leader, right, again, based anywhere in the globe, they know that they could come to Gratitude Network and say, hey, I need help with this. Do you have someone I can talk to? Because sometimes we take for granted, especially in the US, that like, hey, not everyone has that massive network and who to go to. And so making sure that you have a capacity builder behind you who can help you and connect you to that has been really, really effective.
That's awesome. I'm so moved by what you're doing. It's so cool. I'm just curious from your perspective, do you have other partners or peers that you respect that gratitude collaborates with?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot, right? We're not unique in the sense that, hey, we are a capacity builder, we're an accelerator. There are a lot of great other institutions that are doing this work, right? Echoing Green, Ashoka, Revolution Project, Nonprofit Collaborative, right? There's a lot of different organizations who are doing this work. I think Gratitude is a bit unique in that we not just support the nonprofit leader, but we support the whole organization. And so once, right, even if that nonprofit leader leaves the organization, that organization is still part of the network and still can access our materials. I think that's been really important for us. But I would just encourage the space to fund this space even more, right? That like
Totally.
there's so much work to be done to make the world smarter, make nonprofits smarter. I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program
Mhm.
or begging them. I said, I know I'm a nonprofit leader, but I want to learn the way a startup for profit would learn. And I remember and again, I was running my own nonprofit at the time. And I was just so excited to learn about marketing and about finance and about negotiations and all of these cool for profit concepts. And I was like, wow, why doesn't this exist in the nonprofit world? And now we're building it. And that's really fun.
Are there getting into a little bit of the personal side, but obviously as it relates to being a leader, I mean, how many years now have you been running Gratitude Network?
Yeah. This will be year 3.
Got it. As you reflect, I mean, what have been some of the surprises for you? Because I'm sure you're learning new things every year and but coming in from day one to now, 3 years later, what are some of the big aha moments that you've experienced as a leader that maybe you weren't expecting?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, so former educator, and then I've run startup education nonprofits for the last 10 years. And then this is my 3rd year here at Gratitude. And I think one of the things that always blows my mind is, right, just the incredible leaders across the globe that are doing amazing work. And, right, you hear about, big funders like a Mackenzie Scott who drops, 5, $7 million in, these nonprofit bank accounts. And yet here I have this collective of 300 nonprofits. Some of them have, what's comparable to 10,000 US dollars to, maybe a couple $100,000. And they're all these startup ideas and really incredible social impact entrepreneurs. And it's, how do we get them enough visibility to really grow and scale their work? And so I think that was my aha moment of, oh my gosh, there's so much passion in our rooms and the organizations we're working with. And gosh, how do we get them enough resources so that they can change the world quicker? If anything, this work and having this global perspective especially after running a nonprofit that was just HQ'd in New York. I think what I'm realizing with gratitude is the globe is actually in really good hands if we can amplify the work of these leaders. And I know the world is a very, very scary place right now, and I hate looking at the news, but it also reinvigorates me knowing that there are incredible nonprofit leaders, probably a lot of charity charge clients as well who are, right, incredible leaders. And we just need to figure out ways to provide them more resources so that they can do their work faster.
Amen. No, I totally agree with that. I appreciate your sentiment there. As we round out this episode, Lauren, can you just remind us again for people that are listening, how can they get involved, learn more, become a part maybe of your gratitude network?
Absolutely. So again, it's gratitude-network.org. You can always ping me on LinkedIn, or my email is just lauren@gratitude-network.org. But we're really looking forward to getting more people involved with our movement. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to create a movement of stronger change makers who are operating at, as high performing, nonprofit leaders. So really excited to get you involved in whatever capacity you're interested in. But thank
Awesome.
you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, for sure. And whatever the answer is, it's fine, Lauren. But I'm curious, are there any recent announcements or news or anything that specific you'd like to share that we haven't touched on yet?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who aren't following gratitude as closely as you should be, we just received a $100,000 grant from JustWorks, the payroll provider.
Amazing.
They're gonna be helping
Cool.
us. How do we better develop our network so that we can really create that longitudinal impact, that we're really focused on? So we're excited to be partnering with them, and their employees to really scale gratitude even more so that we can make it a larger.
Holy, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Congratulations,
one of
Lauren.
3 organizations chosen, and again, as a smaller nonprofit, we feel very blessed.
Well, the impact that
Dare I say grateful?
grateful's great, but you're not small to the people you serve. So it's really incredible what you're doing. Thank you so much for being on this episode, Lauren. Thank you. Here to Lauren Riley, Executive Director of Gratitude Network. To everyone that continues to listen to the Charity Charge Show, I remind you to charge it forward. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Bye.